So now let's go on to explain what is regenerative tourism. What is this really? Okay, so I think first we need to analyze a little bit what is to regenerate. Okay, so according to the American Heritage Dictionary of the English language, to regenerate is to give a new life or energy to revitalize, but also, and very importantly, to reform spiritually or morally. Okay, so regenerative tourism, and this is a definition that you can find on my thesis if you're interested, is a tourism with a systemic approach that seeks to facilitate a deep and transformative encounter of humans with ourselves, with the other, and with nature. Okay, so it's important to point out that regenerative tourism is often confused with a new type of tourism, such as ecotourism, cultural tourism, so kind of a niche, right? But it's not, it's actually a paradigm which is related to regenerative development and design. And it's a new way of understanding the world and its development, okay? Also, regenerative tourism, its design should be done from the particularity of place. And that's really important because one of the frustrations that we had when we were trying to implement all of these sustainability certifications were that they were far too standardized. They didn't adapt to the particularities of that place specifically. So that was what regeneration does. And it includes, and it must include all of stakeholders and should contribute to building the capacity of the social and environmental systems that sustain life of the destination. So it includes all stakeholders, so it must be co-designed. That's really, really important. And thirdly, it's not just about impacting and compensating the impact. So it's about building the capacity of the social environmental systems of the destination. And thirdly, it ensures the development of us humans in coevolution with nature, considering in its design and implementation process, not just the three pillars, the economic, social, and environmental. So we are adding and always integrating the culture here, but also the political side of it, so the governance and spiritual or worldview. And these have to be completely integrated and seen as very, very systemic. So in regeneration, what we do is create the conditions that are conducive to life. And that's the change of mindset here, okay? So now I'm going to mention the top or four of the regenerative principles to create a resilient business, because it's really important to realize that this is not just something that we do just to save a few ecosystems and then we will continue having damaging practices. And no, this is very, very integrated, okay? And with these practices and with these principles and practices, we want to create resilient businesses, resilient destinations, and abundance at the destinations. And this abundance is not always referring to economy, to money. So we need to redefine as well all of this paradigm, of this economy. So principle one is human co-evolves with nature. I've said this briefly. So the profound understanding that humans are an integral part of nature is a very important premise of regenerative design. It is very important to understand our past relationship with nature and the potential this relationship has on our present and our future. So we must break with the belief that humans can only damage the environment and that natural systems can only be used as a piece of machinery. So sometimes we just go to both extremes, right? So there's this idea and this Anthropocene world, and this is happening. So humans use environment as a piece of machinery. So in this view, we're shifting this, we're changing this view. And also we're given the opportunity of this coevolution and this understanding of nature and the patterns of nature and how nature influences us and us nature. So it's a reciprocal relationship, okay? So this can make us realize that we are allies of other living systems and that the outcomes of this relationship are not just for the benefit of humans. So humans is just one species out of all of them that we have on Earth. And an example of this view would be the Western society's grouping of living things into a system that is based on objects, based on their appearance, versus the classification of indigenous people based on a process-oriented approach, such as grouping plants based on how animals pollinate them. So we're talking also about how we focus here on processes more than outcomes themselves, not more than specific objectives that we're going to go work towards and then stay there and not move, because the world and nature doesn't work like that. So it evolves constantly, it works with cycles, and that's how we have to work. Okay, the second principle is wholeness thinking. Okay, so as we've seen briefly through the definition of regenerative tourism, so we have the three pillars with sustainability, so the social equity, the environmental protection and the economic viability, right? But is this enough, really? So in regeneration, once again, we're being more holistic, more integral. So we have the environmental part of it, which is the regeneration of degraded ecosystems, the biodiversity and ecosystems above other interests. We have the social part of it, which is inclusive and equitable societies, participatory, proactive. Okay, then we have the economic part of it, which is fair and equitable economy for the common good, circular regenerative economy, okay? Then we include the political side of it because it's a very important part, but it's about participatory governance, transparency and ethics. And one beautiful thing about regeneration is that it's a grassroots movement. And it can happen because in humanity, when we put our mind to something, changes and beautiful changes can happen. Then we always include the cultural side of it, which is this rescue of cultural diversity and local knowledge, transforming this knowledge into wisdom to assure a better future with greater possibilities of adaptation. And then we go on to include the spiritual part of it, which is talking about values, about ethics, about a society that cares. And then so we go on to move from this fragmented model to a more systemic model. Conventionally and up until now, even in sustainability, we've been making use of this fragmented model where parts of, which means basically that, parts of fragments are divided and managed and developed independently, okay? So we start to move, and we're starting to move towards, as you know, the sustainable development goals. And these are very noble goals that we need to achieve. But then we realize that they cannot be achieved independently because there isn't one without the other. Okay, so it's really important that we have this systemic view. So on this illustration in the middle, done by the Stockholm Resilience Center, they integrated the global goals together and definitely illustrated this biosphere foundation for global sustainability and how food links to every one of the global goals. Okay, so it implies that economies and societies are seen as an integrated part of the biosphere. So this model is already shifting our development paradigm away from the current sectoral approach in which social, economic, and ecological development are seen as separate parts. And we are now moving towards a global logic in which the economy serves society to evolve within the same operating space of the planet. So the economy serves society and not the other way around. Okay, so in regeneration, we start from this point, the systemic model. Okay, this model. So in regenerative design, it's imperative to see the world as a whole, or at least in terms of closely interconnected relationships and systems. So it is this integrative view that leads to a more holistic understanding of how living and non-living natural systems interact and relate to humans and the systems that we have created. And for regenerative development, a systems-based approach is essential. So everything built, such as buildings, for example, in tourism development, is not considered as individual objects, but it's designed to be part of a larger systems. Okay, so we always need to take into account. So even in when you hear about this is a sustainable building, or this is a sustainable project, and it's the same with regeneration. So one thing cannot be regenerative, one thing cannot be sustainable if it's not thought and planned and created in relationship with everything that surrounds them, with all of the systems that create that destination. Okay, so we always need to realize that we are part of a larger system. Okay, so rather than a collection of things, a regenerative design develops energy systems and networks of processes that are dynamic and constantly structure and restructure the place. So there is a really nice book that explains all of this by Regenesis groups, Regeneration, Development and Design, that I really recommend, and explains a lot about this. This picture is the Miscellaneous funds. So this is a very good example of, they're individually, genetically distinctive, but they connect and they share resources and information very quickly. So, for example, if insects come, that information is immediately passed on to other insects to produce biochemicals. So because of that, 95% of trees depend on sustaining themselves through nutrients and water. So what is that telling us? What it's telling us is that in this a very clear example, one cannot work independently, so they work together as a whole, and they share nutrients. In forests you see that the trees share nutrients and one helps the other. So that's how nature works, and that's how we start understanding how we need to imitate the patterns of nature and apply this to organizations. Principle 3 is living organizations. So what does that mean? Okay, so human organizations have been understood so far as machines, but they're actually living systems. The living systems theory was first developed by Rudolf Steiner, who is an Austrian philosopher, and divided them into 4 different levels. And Bernard Levergaard took this to organizations. So on this picture, we see a man or a woman. And then we see these parts, the thinking, the feeling, and the doing. And this is always present in regeneration, okay? And they work constantly. So that's why there's this infinite symbol, right? So we're thinking, we're feeling, and we're doing. So we're not just concentrated on doing. So we always go through all of these 3 stages. Okay, so on level 1, we have the physical body, which comes from the mineral realm. So right now we're doing comparisons, okay, with organizations or even destinations, projects, etc., to live in systems, okay? So these are resources. This is compared to Earth. is everything physical and material. So in an office, this would be the furniture, computers, programs, etc. So we go on to level 2 is the vital of the etheric body. So it comes from the plant realm, water, and it can be compared to a plant which grows in the direction of light. And the processes or flows within this organization. So this is the doing part of the organization, okay? And this could be the architecture, it could be the good practices in an organization, the footprint, the energy, and in a travel agency, this could be, all the processes, the bookings, the clients, the employees, okay? Then we go on to the level 3. This is the astral or the soul body, where our emotions, our sympathies and antipathies lay. It comes from the animal realm, the air, okay? And so if we had these 3 levels only, so we could be considered animals, which is fantastic, because they obey their instincts, okay? So in companies, it is the relationships, which is the soul of the organization, and is reflected in what happens between people. So it is a higher degree of conscience, because then you see, okay, if people are stressed or they are happy, and the relationships among colleagues, the leadership. So this is the feeling part of it, okay? And finally, we go into the level 4, because many companies just stay here, but we're going to go on and step a little bit further, and we go on to this level 4, which is the spiritual part of the human being, the I, which is unique. So this is the human realm, the fire, okay? So this is the only element that needs to be created and maintained alive. So it is the identity of the organization, such as its cultural and values, so its mission, its vision, the goals, even the attitude that you see in the organization. So this is the level that reveals the essence and makes the organization unique. So this is the thinking part of it. Okay, so the identity, the purpose, that coherence even. And then we have, it's very, very important in this process of living organizations to realize that we need to align the individual vocation with the collective vocation. Okay, so this is an alignment and coherence of the person with the project design and the place design. Okay. And the principle 4 is designing from place. I've mentioned this briefly a little bit earlier. The sense of place is a very, very important and basic point of departure in a regenerative project or in regeneration in general. So the essence and pattern of the territory must first be considered. And this leads to the design of the project and the design of the experience. And the relationship of visitors to the place must always be in accordance with the local feeling. So we need to harmonize this. So in this planning of regenerative tourism, we must always consider this, okay? So first of all, we feel the place, okay? So we observe what's going on in this place, the history of the place, the feeling that locals have about this place, the connection they have. What's happened here before, culturally, but also ecologically, okay? What patterns can we see in this place? Okay, so we need to really, really understand the essence of this place and potentially create maps, regarding the feeling of the locals, this essence and this sense of place that the locals feel. And then this relationship with these places should be the base for the design of the experience, if we're going to design an experience there, so that this experience is going to potentialize that the relationship of the visitors with that place, it goes in accordance with the local feeling and the relationship of the locals with that place. So doing this, we are linking and we are harmonizing this relationship that the locals have with the experience that the visitors should experience as well. Okay, so we need to really through stories, through experiences, to have the visitor feel this connection with place. Okay, so that's why it's really important to invite visitors to see these areas, to feel our culture and our ecosystems, and to help them feel this connection with place. Okay, and also, and there's the three relationships in regeneration. So they must feel, you know, this connection with themselves and the relationship with themselves, with the others as well, and finally with nature, as we've said. Okay, so what do we need to be ready for in this era? Okay, so we have seen more clearly now that the crisis that we're experiencing in the world, and what we're really putting at risk with this crisis, is life itself. Okay, so life is threatened by the ecological and global crisis. So life has two material dependencies, and according to Yayo Herrera, who is an anthropologist and activist and who I really admire, that we are totally codependent. So the economy and technology are dependent on nature as well, you know, and that we are interdependent. So we have a second territory now, which is our body, that also gets sick and needs nurturing, and historically, you know, has been looked after by women due to, you know, the societies that we've lived in for centuries. And so we cannot carry on doing business as usual and doing the minimum and try to maintain completely our status quo, hoping that someone else will take care of the negative impacts. So this shows also that we've been living our lives forgetting about these dependencies. And this pandemic has come to teach us that everything is systemic and that we cannot get out of this individually. So it's very important that we are aware that collaboration is more important than ever. That the world has woken up, and at least a good portion of humanity has woken up and realized that, you know, they have more awareness of you know, naturally and socially. And also, so because of this, the demand for sustainability and regenerative practices is strengthening. And so whoever is not working up to, you know, whoever is not waking up to this need is going to be left behind. So the companies that are still working and doing business as usual are going to be completely obsolete very soon. Obviously, the social distancing, so people are not so happy to go to crowded places anymore. And that's a great opportunity to give them this space of connection. And, you know, the younger people also are going to travel. They have bigger conscience as well, social environmental conscience. Experts say that more viruses will come, mostly if we don't make any changes, any structural changes, more viruses will come. So we need to be prepared, and we need to think differently. We need to not be happy just to compensate some impacts, adapting to climate change. You know, that's not enough. You know, the world needs immediate action. So really, we need to think about what can we do collectively to transform and make, you know, an important change. So we need to strengthen our resilience, you know, and how do we do that? I mean, it's simple living, it's innovation, it's creativity, it's rescue of ancestral cultures, okay? And again, collaboration is basic. You know, we are in this new era where we need to realize that we need to work together. So I hope this, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Obviously, there are more design principles in regeneration. This is a very, very important paradigm. We need to enter into this new era. So thank you so much for your attention. Thank you once again for the invitation to participate in this wonderful event. And here's my contact details in case you want to get in touch with me. So have a fantastic event. Thank you so much.